We use the Standard Otter Survey method to assess the presence of otters which leave conspicuous tracks and signs.
Otters have large webbed feet, 9 centimetres or 3 inches wide, and 6 centimetres or 2 inches tall, leaving footprints with 5 toes which may or may not have claws depending on how soft the substrate is. In contrast, American mink tracks are unwebbed, smaller at 3 centimetres or 2 inches wide, with a much more pointed arrangement of toes with obvious claws. Both female and male otters are territorial and mark their territory using their droppings, known as spraint.
Otters want their spraint to be found, and so place it in prominent locations such as on top of boulders, cobbles, sandy sidebars and beaches, even at the top of banks on tussocks of grass.
Spraints range from an indistinct black tarry smudge through to a fully formed 9 centimetre or 3 inch long brown dropping. Breaking a scat open helps determine if it's mostly fibrous mammal hair and bird feathers, which is more likely mink or fox, or whether it contains fish bones and crayfish cells, in which case it's more likely otter.
Bridges are a favoured sprainting place, so make sure to check rocks in and around the entrance and exit to bridges, and also the concrete bridge footing, which might provide a ledge for sprainting. In those conditions, spraint can last for a long time. They become dry, white and chalky.
Otter spraint is not unpleasant, being a sweet, fishy, mushroomy, earthy odour that some say is similar to jasmine tea. Smell is therefore diagnostic, so don't be afraid to get your nose close.
Here we can see a very obvious bird dropping, which has quite a lot of white. Mammal droppings typically have less white or no white at all. In addition to checking boulders, make sure to check soft mud for prints. Here you can see 3 toes of a bird. When checking banks, make sure to also check the vegetation, as there might be droppings that could well be spraint. Here we have a dropping that could be a spraint, but when we look at it, there's quite a lot of green in there, which suggests it's more likely bird. An otter survey is a 600-metre stretch of one river bank, a lake shore, or the high tide mark at the coast. Due to their ease of access, the likelihood of sprainting and the persistence of spraints under bridges, it is advised that every otter survey should start at a bridge if there is one on the 600-metre stretch of river. If evidence of otters is not found and there's a second bridge on the same stretch of river, move to the second bridge to maximise the likelihood of detecting otters. If there's no evidence of otters or no bridges on the 600-metre stretch of river, then from your starting point work 300 metres upstream and downstream to complete the full 600-metre survey. Small streams like this one, only a few centimetres deep, can be waded quite safely provided you've taken some precautions. Make sure that you work in a buddy system and you have an appropriate risk assessment. So major rivers like this one represent a health and safety problem. You can't enter the water. The survey is done entirely from the bank, and here the banks are steep and heavily vegetated. So you have to look for areas of shorter vegetation where animals might be using these as latrines, or other structures like the edge of this towpath where otters might well deposit their spraint to mark their territory. Canals represent a similar problem. You can't enter the water. So here, check the canal wall edges carefully where otters might mark their territory. The confluence where two streams or rivers meet, particularly where there are boulders, is an excellent place to find otter spraint. As are waterfalls, especially where there's clutter in underneath, such as these fallen logs. Otters use dens amongst boulders and under tree roots called holts, but it can be very hard to confirm that these belong to an otter without camera trap footage or other tracks and signs nearby. Some otters access the water from their holts via a slide or a chute, an area cleared of vegetation that they slide down on their belly from their holt entrance to the water's edge, usually no more than a few meters long. Evidence of otters can be trickier to find at lake sites where there's a lot of dense vegetation around the shore, such as these rushes. So use the opportunities. Check little cobbly beaches, check exposed boulders. These will be some of the few places that an otter will be able to sprint, and make sure you walk around the edge of pontoons and jetties, which they might sprint on as well. The survey protocol is modified at the coast to take in a 600-metre stretch of high tide line. So where the high water mark meets the vegetation is where you want to focus and concentrate. Otters may well be offshore feeding and bring in their prey to eat on the seaweed, but they'll mark their territory high on the shore, again on prominent rocks in particular, but because much of the coastal vegetation will be short maritime grassland, their latrines are particularly obvious by excess growth due to nutrient deposition. A great place to check for spraint along the coasts are sea walls, sea defences and the boulders just below. If there is a river or a stream on the 600-metre stretch of coast that you're surveying, make sure to check its mouth with the sea. This is another classic place where otters will want to mark their territory.
Once a sprint is found, a site is recorded as otter positive without the need to complete a full 600-metre transect. Once evidence of an otter is found, surveying stops. Before moving to the next site, a range of environmental data are recorded. These include estimates of river width, depth, flow, bank features, water use, evidence of pollution, surrounding land use, and any perceived threats and pressures. During the last National Otter Survey in 2010-11, 63% of sites visited had some evidence of otters. One of the main factors influencing whether a spraint is found is rainfall. Flooding removes spraints, which take time to accumulate. For this reason, otter surveys should not occur in late autumn or winter, while sites should never be surveyed within 2 weeks of significant or heavy rain. It is better to pause surveying and wait until drier weather with lower water levels. Around 900 sites will be surveyed by the National Parks and Wildlife Service staff throughout the country, recording their data using the Esri app Survey 123, which will relay the data back for collation and analysis.